Hello everyone. In this tutorial video, I'm going to explain fruitful function in Python. I will also explain fruitful function with arguments and parameters, fruitful function without arguments and parameters. But before that, please support the channel by clicking on the subscribe button and hit also the notification bell so that you will be notified with all the new videos that I'm going to upload in this channel. And so, what is a fruitful function? A fruitful function is a user-defined function that can return a value or values. So it can return a value. Basically, there are two types of function in Python. First one is the void function, and the other one is fruitful function. I have a video where I explain there what is a void function. So this void function doesn't return a value, doesn't return anything. So that is the difference between the two. You may watch this video about void function. I have explained here the void function, the arguments, and the parameters so that you will have a better understanding of what is void function. And so here in this video, I will be explaining fruitful function. So the difference is that it can return a value. Void function doesn't return a value. Fruitful function, it can return a value. That's the basic difference. A fruitful function may have arguments or parameters, or it may not have arguments or parameters, but it can return a value. I have an example here wherein it returns a value, the sum of n1 and n2. So in the body of the getSum, we have n1 is equal to 10, n2 is equal to 20, and then it will just return n1 and n2. Okay, so this example is a function that doesn't have a parameter. So meaning to say, when we call it here in the main program, we will just say getSum. If we will call it. Okay, so it doesn't have also an argument. It is possible like that. Okay, so again, if you will look at our getSum function, it has two statements and then it will return the sum. Okay, when we say return, okay, return a value or values, it means when it goes back to the calling program, when it returns back here, it is bringing a data, or it is bringing a value or values. In this case, it is only bringing or returning with a value, and that is the sum of n1 and n2. So basically, when we run this program, it goes like this. So it will call the function getSum, and then it will jump here. The processing will jump here, def getSum. Okay, so the definition of getSum. And then it will execute line number 7. It will execute line number 8. So we have n1 is equal to 10, n2 is equal to 20. And then you said, or we put here, n1 plus n2. That means 30. So when it returned back here, it is bringing the value 30. Okay, so that's how it is. However, when we run this, there is nothing there. There is no output for this one if we will run it. To have an output, we can simply say, let's say for instance, we just wanted to run it. I mean, we just wanted to print the value of the return value. So I can just say print. Okay, again, without the print, it will not show anything. It returned the value, but it doesn't show anything, or it will not show anything. Okay, because we did not do anything on the return value. Okay, we just say getSum. So if we want to do something on the return value, let's say we want to print it, then we can say that something like this. So now when we run this program, okay, so we will see now an output. And so as you can see, we have an output here of 30. Okay, so that's how it is. Now, some programmers, they would like to assign it in a variable. Let's call it, S1 is equal to get sum. Meaning to say, whatever is the return value of this, okay, in line number 13, whatever is the value of the get sum, I'm going to assign it in S1. So in this case, the value of S1 now is 30 because the return here is N1 and N2. So when it returns here in line 13, so the value of S1 is 30. And so if we want to print S1, we can just say print S1. Okay, so again, when we run this one, we are expecting two output, 230. So we have here 30 here, and then the first 30 is this one, and the second 30 is this one here. All right. So it is something like that. So in S1 here, you can do a lot of things now here. You can use it for computation. You can use it in conditional statement, or you can use it in loop statement, or something like so. You can do anything now here because this S1 has a value now, and that is the return value of the function get1 or get_sum. Okay, so that's how it is. So again, this is an example of a function, a fruitful function. Okay, it can return a value or values. However, this function doesn't have parameters. Okay, so when you call it, it doesn't have also an argument. Okay, so it's got something like that. Again, inside the body of this get_sum function, you can place anything here. You can put if statement, loop statements, so something like this. All right, so this is just a basic example. So the idea here is that when the function will return in the main program, it is bringing a value. Okay, so now it is possible that it can also bring back more than one value. Okay, so for instance, we have here entry is equal to, let's say, 100. Okay, and so I want to return also entry. Okay, I want to return it. When it returns to the main program, it will bring also the value of entry. So I can say entry here. Okay, so again, this function now here will return two values, the sum of N1 plus N2 and the value of entry. So it is like this. Okay, so now in the main program, since it is returning two values, okay, I'm just going to remove this one now, okay, so that I can run properly. Now, when it returns, okay, so to the main program, it is bringing now two values. Since it is bringing back two values or returning back two values, therefore, there should be two variables also here that will get the value. So, for instance, let's call it dnum3. Okay, this is just a variable. Okay. So, you are returning two values, 1 and 2. N1 plus N2, the sum of that, and N3. So, therefore, there should be two variables also here, waiting for those values. So, therefore, something like S1 will take N1 plus N2, or N1 plus N2 will take S1, and then the value of dnum3 is the value of N3. Okay, so whatever is the value of N3, that's the value of dnum3. Okay, so therefore, I can print now both. So print dnum3 if I want to print. Okay, if I wanted to print. Okay, so I am expecting now an output of this is 30, this is 100. Okay, so when we run it, so we have here 30 and 100. So meaning to say, the return value can be more than 1. Okay, the return values can be more than 1. Okay, it could be a result of a computation, so something like this, or something like this. Okay, so it's something like this. Some programmers will say, instead of n1 plus n2, they will simply say s is equal to n1 plus n2. So this is also possible. So therefore, you will just say here s. Okay. So you are returning the value of s, which is 30, and the value of n3, which is 100. So it's the same thing. Nothing happened here, in this line here. So it's the same thing. There are two values being returned. So there will be two values or variables here that are waiting for those values. Okay, so it is waiting here. When it return here, these are waiting. So the value of S1 is S. The value of N3 is, dnum3 is N3. Alright, so again, you can do anything now in these variables. You may use it in computation, loop statements, if statement. You can do whatever is required based on the problem on these two variables. So this is an example of a function, fruitful function, without arguments and without parameters, but it can return a value. So as simple as that, right? So this is an example of that. Now, let's have another function. This time, let's have a function with arguments and parameters. Okay, so I'm going to remove all this first so that we can concentrate on that one. No? So here it is. I'm going to create a function, let's say a function that can return the highest number and the lowest number. Okay, so I'm going to call a function, let's call the function as marks. Okay, so let's call the function as marks. Okay, so we will put here all the marks of the student, for example, or the students. So let's say we have here mark of about 20, mark of 30, mark of 5, or marks of 45. Okay, and a marks of, let's say, 10. So we have here 5 arguments, 20, 30, 5, 45, and 10. And these arguments are numbers. Of course, arguments can be any data type. Okay, here we have numbers, integer. Okay, so it can be combination of different data types. But for now, let's make it simple. All numbers first. Okay, so it's like this. So we have here 5 arguments. Again, these are what we call arguments. Okay, so let's create now the function. So let's have def marks, open and close, and colon there. And then we will have now the parameters. Okay, so we have 5 parameters, so we must have 5 variables. Let's just make it simple. The first variable, parameter, let's call it A, B, C, D, and E. So it's like this. So we have here 5. So we have here also, or we must also have 5 parameters. So again, these are what we call now the parameters. These are what we call here in line 16 as arguments. Okay, so the value of the parameters, okay, will be the value you specify here in the arguments. Okay, so in the manner they appear, so in order. No? So for example, A will take 20, B will take 30, C will take 5, D will take 45, and E will take 10. So in that order. So it's like this. No? So number of parameters should be the same with the number of arguments. You have 5 here as arguments, so you must have also 5 here in the parameters. Okay, so that's how it is. So now we can do anything now with A, B, C, and D because they have values, right? So we can do anything about those values. Okay, so since we want to get the high marks, let's call it high marks, H marks is equal to, I'm just going to say, well, I'm just going to use a max function. Let's call it A, B, C, D, E. Okay, let's call also the lowest marks. So L marks. Oops, right there. So I'm just going to use the built-in function min A, B, C, D, E. Okay, so and then I can return now the value, the highest marks, and I'm going to return also the lowest marks. Okay, so again, it depends on the problem that you want to solve. So the number of return values will depend on the problem. So in this case, we just wanted to return 2 values, H marks and L marks. So H marks is highest marks and L marks is the lowest marks. So the number of return values will depend on the problem you are solving. It doesn't always mean 2, okay, because I have 2 here in my previous example, and I have again 2 here. So it's not like that. Okay, so it depends on the number, or it depends on the problem you are solving. Okay, so this is just what we want. Okay, so here it is. So it is returning a 2. It is returning 2 values. So therefore, when we call it, okay, when it returned here, so it must have 2 variables also waiting. Okay, so again, when we call it here, line 19, so it will go to line number 13. Marks A, B, C, D, E. So those are the parameters. A will take 20, B will take 30, C will take 5, D will take 45, and E will take 10. So those are the values of A, B, C, D, and E. So we can do anything on those. When it returned, okay, when it returned, it means it will go back in 19. Okay, in line number 19. So in line number 19, there should be variables because these marks will return a value. So where are those values now? Right? That's the question. I already explained to you. There should be 2 variables waiting here because you are returning 2 values. So you can just say here, let's say highest marks HM, comma, lowest marks LM is equal to like this. So the return value of this will go to HM and LM. Okay, again, in the order. No? It should be in order. All right? So the values will be assigned in the manner or in the order returned by the function. So for instance, HM. What's the value of HM? The value of HM is H marks. The value of LM is L marks. So that's how it is. So therefore, for instance, I just wanted to print it. HM. And then the other one, I'm going to print LM. Okay. So when we run it, or when we run this program, we are expecting the highest, the HM, we're expecting something like 45. And then the lowest, LM, we are expecting 5. So it is 45 and 5. Highest is 45, lowest is 5. I'm going to save this one first. Okay, this time I'm going to run now. There you go. So we have 45 and 5. Okay, so this is an example of a fruitful function with arguments and having parameters. Okay, so it's like this. Now, again, when a function returns a value or values, it could be numbers or it could be any data type. Okay, so for instance, let us input here the name of the student, for instance. So I'm going to say, let's say, stud name is equal to input, let's say, input student name. Okay, and then we will return the name here, stud name. Or let's call it S name, just to make it simple. Okay, so, oh, not S name, sorry. Our variable is stud name. And so here, we will say stud name. So, we are returning two data types now. This one is integer, and this one is string. 3 variables. Okay, so it is possible. So since we are returning 3 variables now, so here, it is waiting here. There should be 3 variables also waiting. Okay, so let's call it S name. Okay, so again, HM will take H marks, LM will take L marks, and S name will take stud name. Okay, so therefore I can now print if I wanted to print. Of course, it is not limited to printing only. You can do anything in the variable now here. This S name here, you can do anything now here. So in this case, I'm just going to print it. Okay, so S name. So when we run now, let's see. So I'm going to input the name. I'm going to say Michael. Okay, so because it is asking me to input, as you can see here, input. Okay, so when I press enter now here, I'm expecting 45.5 Michael. Okay, so it's something like this. So again, the idea is that you can pass arguments. Okay, you can pass an arguments within the function, and then that function, when it is called, it will receive those arguments and they will become parameters. These are parameters. So the parameters will receive those values. And inside your function, you can do anything now with those parameter values. Okay, so you can use those again in loop statements, in if statements, in any computation. It depends on the problem. Okay, and then you can return any number of values, any data type. So our example here, this is an integer, and this is a string. Okay, that's the only idea there. It will receive, and then you can process all those variables that the function received in the form of parameters, and then it can return value. Whatever you wish to return, it can be returned. However, you have to remember, the number of return values or the values you want to return should also match the waiting variables here, because it will retrieve or it will receive those values here. Okay, so HM, LM, S name. So it's like this. And then you can do anything now with this HM, LM, and S name. Okay, here we just wanted to print. That's why we have a like this. So we just make it simple. But of course, you can do anything with these variables. So the numbers you can use for computation, HM and LM, S name you can display. So this is an example of a fruitful function with arguments, using arguments and parameters, and it returned a value. All right. So the idea again is just it will process anything inside the body of the function, and it can return anything also. So that is the fruitful function, a function or user-defined function that can return a value or values. I hope you have understand these simple examples here. If you have comments, you may write those comments in the comment section below, and I will be grateful to answer those comments. Okay, so thank you very much for watching this video, and see you on my next video.